The Duke of Harrogate almost rode past her. The snow had been falling since noon, and by dusk it had turned the whole of the North Road into a white blindness, and Marcus Thane, 9th Duke of Harrogate, wanted only to reach his own gates before the drifts closed the way entirely. He had his collar up and his hat down, and his mind on the fire waiting at Harrogate Hall, and he almost, rode straight past the dark shape half buried at the foot of the milestone, taking it for a fallen branch, or a dead yew, or nothing at all. But his horse shied, and Marcus, looking down to see what had spooked the animal, saw a hand, a woman's hand, blue-white against the snow, the fingers curled and still. He was out of the saddle before he had decided to be. He plunged through the drift to his knees and turned the shape over, and it was a young woman, a girl, really, no more than 2 or 3 and 20, in a thin gray cloak that might as well have been paper against a night like this. Her lips gone the color of a bruise, her lashes crusted with ice, her face the terrible waxen white of a body the cold has nearly finished with. He tore off his glove and pressed his fingers to her throat, and felt, faint and slow, so slow, a pulse. Alive, barely, but alive. No, the Duke of Harrogate said, to the storm, to the milestone, to the girl who could not hear him. No, you do not die on my road. Not tonight. Not while I am on it. He did not think. There was no time to think. And afterward he would be unable to say that he had made any decision at all. Only that his body had done what a body does when there is a life to be saved, and the cold coming down, and no one else on the whole white road but him. He wrenched off his own greatcoat, the heavy caped thing that had cost more than the girl had likely earned in a year, and he wrapped her in it, and he lifted her. She weighed nothing, nothing at all, a bundle of frozen cloth and fading breath, and he got her up onto the horse, and himself up behind her, holding her against his chest. And he turned the animal's head into the storm, and drove for Harrogate Hall through the closing dark, one arm locked around the dying stranger, the other on the reins, his own coat gone, and the cold reaching for him too now. And he did not care. He did not care about anything in the world, except the small, slowing warmth pressed against him, and the single furious thought that beat in him louder than the storm. Stay, stay. He would think, later, about how near it had been. Another hour, and she would have been gone. Another quarter-mile past the milestone, and he would never have seen her. The whole rest of both their lives turned on a shying horse and a glimpse of a blue-white hand, and Marcus Thane, who had not believed in Providence since he was a boy, would never again be entirely certain that there was no such thing. The gates of Harrogate loomed up out of the white. He was shouting before he reached them, for the grooms, for the housekeeper, for hot water and warm bricks and blankets, and the great house erupted into motion around him, and he carried the frozen girl up the steps himself, and would let no one else take her. And Mrs. Fenimore, the housekeeper, took one look at the Duke's face, and stopped asking questions, and simply began, briskly, to give orders that might save a life. She did not wake for 2 days. The doctor came, fighting through the drifts, and did what little there was to do, and told the Duke frankly that he did not know whether the girl would live, that the cold had gone very deep, that there was a fever now, that the next days would tell. Frostbite had touched her hands and feet, but not, he thought, past saving. The greater danger was the fever and the lungs. He recommended warmth, and broth if she could take it, and prayer, in which he did not sound as though he placed much confidence. And then he went away again into the snow, and left the Duke of Harrogate alone with a dying stranger and the whole long white silence of the storm. Marcus did not leave her. He could not have said why. He was not a man given to nursing. He was a widower of 2 years' standing, a grave, private, self-contained man who had built his life after his wife's death into a fortress of routine and solitude, and had told himself he preferred it that way. He had a great house and a great estate, and no one who needed him, and no one he needed, and he had believed himself, if not happy, then at least safe. And now, there was a strange girl in the blue guest room fighting for her life, and the Duke of Harrogate found that he could not make himself go and sit by his own fire while she did it alone. So he sat by hers. He sat by her through the long nights while the fever burned in her, and he bathed her forehead with cool cloths when she raved, and he listened. Because in her fever she talked, disjointed and frightened, and the pieces of her story assembled themselves in the firelit dark. Her name was Rose. He learned that first, because she said it herself, defending it. "I am Rose. I am not girl. My name is Rose Aldrich." She had been a seamstress. A good one, he gathered. Apprenticed young and grown skilled, in the household of a family called Barrow, in a town 2 days' walk to the south. And something had happened there. In her fever she begged, over and over, "Don't, please. I've done nothing. I won't tell. Please don't turn me out." And Marcus, listening, felt a slow, cold anger gather in him that had nothing to do with the storm. She had been turned out, into the snow, on foot, in a paper cloak, 2 days' walk from anywhere, a young woman thrown into a killing winter by people who knew exactly what they were doing. He did not yet know why, but he knew the shape of it, and it made him want to ride south through the drifts and find the Barrows and ask them, with his hands, what kind of people put a girl out to freeze. On the third night, the fever broke. He knew it the moment it happened. The change in her breathing, the sudden dampness of the sheets, the way the terrible flush faded and left her pale and spent, and for the first time, truly asleep rather than lost. He had her wrapped and the linens changed before Mrs. Fenimore had finished being scandalized that the Duke of Harrogate was doing a nurse's work with his own hands, and he sat back down in the chair he had not left in 3 days, and he watched Rose Aldrich sleep the deep healing sleep of a body that has decided, after all, to live, and something in his chest that had been clenched tight for 3 days, slowly, painfully, let go. She opened her eyes near dawn. She did not know where she was. He watched her surface into consciousness and take in the firelight, the fine hangings of the bed, the warmth, the impossible soft weight of good blankets. And then she saw him, a large, dark man in his shirt sleeves, sitting close beside her bed, with 3 days' beard on his face, and exhaustion in every line of him, and she went rigid with a fear so total that it hurt him to see it. "It is all right," he said at once, low, not moving, the way one gentles a frightened animal. "You are safe. No one here will harm you. You have my word, and I do not give it lightly. You have been very ill. You nearly died of the cold, and you are at Harrogate Hall, and you have been asleep 3 days, and no one has touched you but the doctor and the housekeeper and myself, and that only to keep you alive. You are safe, Rose. You are safe now. You know my name." Her voice was a cracked whisper, and full of dread. "How do you? You told me, in the fever. You told me a great deal in the fever." He saw the fear leap higher and understood it. "You need not be afraid of what you said. You defended yourself, mostly. You told me your name was Rose Aldrich and not girl. And you were quite right too, and I have not called you anything else. You said you had done nothing wrong, I believe you, and you begged someone not to turn you out into the snow." His jaw tightened. "Someone did though, didn't they? Someone put you out on the North Road in a storm, in a cloak not fit for October, 2 days from anywhere. I found you at the milestone. Another hour and I would have found a body." Rose Aldrich began, weakly, to cry. Not the wild weeping of the fever, but the slow, helpless tears of someone who has been holding on so long and so hard that a single kindness undoes them. And the Duke of Harrogate, who had not comforted a living soul in 2 years, found himself doing it clumsily and completely, taking her cold, thin hand in both of his and holding it while she wept, saying nothing, because there was nothing to say that was larger than the fact of her being alive and warm and safe. And sometimes the only comfort is to be a solid, warm presence in the room while a frightened person remembers how to breathe. "Why?" he asked, when she had quieted. "Why did they do it? What did you do, Rose?" "No, wrong question. What did they say you did?" And Rose Aldrich, too weak and too grateful, and too far past the end of her strength to dissemble, told him. It was an old, ugly, ordinary story, and it made the Duke of Harrogate angrier than he had been in years. She had been a seamstress in the Barrow household, a merchant family, prosperous, purse-proud, climbing. She was good at her work and quiet, and gave no trouble, and for 4 years she had sewed their gowns and mended their linens and kept to herself, and it had been a hard place but a place, with a roof and bread and a corner to sleep in, and Rose Aldrich, who had no family living and no one in the world, had been grateful for it. And then the son of the house, young Mr. Barrow, home from the town, idle and spoilt and used to taking what he wanted, had begun to trouble her. She had put him off. She had put him off for months, carefully, the way a servant must, without giving offense, without seeming to accuse, because a seamstress who accuses the son of the house of anything is a seamstress without a place. And at last, cornered one evening in the linen room, she had done the only thing left to her, and struck him, and fled. And he, humiliated, his pride stung worse than his face, had gone straight to his mother with a different story entirely. He had said that Rose had stolen a brooch, Mrs. Barrow's good garnet brooch, which young Barrow had himself taken from his mother's box and hidden in the seamstress's things. And when it was found there, exactly where he had put it, Rose Aldrich had been branded a thief in front of the whole household, and turned out that same night, in the snow, without a character, without wages owed, without even a decent cloak, because a thief is owed nothing, and a family that puts a thief out into a storm is only being just, and if she froze on the road, well, that was God's judgment on a wicked girl, and no fault of theirs. "They took my name," Rose said, and there was something worse than tears in her voice now, something flat and broken. "That is the part. I keep thinking of the part. They did not only put me out. They made me a thief first, so that even if I lived, I could never go anywhere, or be anything, because I have no character, and a story of theft follows a servant everywhere. They did not just try to kill my body, Your Grace. They killed my name, so that if the snow failed to finish me, the world would. A seamstress with a theft against her does not sew again. She goes to the workhouse, or the street, or the river. That is what they meant for me. That is what they still mean for me, whether I lived or not. So you see," she turned her face away, "you were very kind to save me, and I will be grateful to you until I die. But I do not think you have saved very much. There is nothing left of me to save." They saw to that before they opened the door. The Duke of Harrogate was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet and very level, and Rose, who did not yet know him, could not have known that it was the voice he used only when he had made up his mind about something completely and forever. "Rose Aldrich," he said, "look at me. I am going to tell you 3 things, and I want you to hear all 3, because I do not say things I do not mean, and I am about to mean these very much indeed. The first is that I believe you, entirely, every word. I have spent 40 years learning to read people, and I have watched you these 3 days at the absolute end of your strength, when the fever stripped every defense you had, and there was no guile in you anywhere, only a frightened, honest girl defending a name she had done nothing to lose. I believe you, and my belief is not nothing, because I am the Duke of Harrogate, and in this county my word is worth a great deal more than a merchant's garnet brooch. The second is that they have not killed your name, because a name is not theirs to kill. They have told a lie about it. A lie can be unmade. It takes power to unmake a lie once it is told, more power than a friendless seamstress has ever had. But it happens that power is the one thing I possess in great abundance, and have found almost nothing worth spending on these 2 years past. I am going to spend it on this. I am going to clear your name, Rose, publicly and completely, so that the truth follows you everywhere the lie would have. And the third thing," he paused, and for the first time, something in the level voice wavered, because the third thing surprised even him, rising up unbidden and undeniable from 3 days and nights beside a dying stranger's bed. "The third thing is that you are wrong, that there is nothing left to save. There is a very great deal left to save. I have sat beside it for 3 days, watching it fight to live, when a weaker soul would have let go. And it is one of the finest things I have seen in a long gray life, and I do not intend to let the Barrows, or the snow, or the whole cruel, indifferent world have 1 inch more of it. You are not nothing, Rose Aldrich. You are the bravest person I have met in 2 years, and I found you at a milestone, and I am not finished with you yet. Now, rest. You are safe, and you are believed, and tomorrow we begin to take your name back. Sleep." And Rose Aldrich, who had been thrown into the snow to die by people who called her worthless, looked at the grave dark man who had given her his coat and his bed and 3 days of his life, and now, impossibly, his word. And for the first time since the barrow's door had closed behind her, she let herself believe that she might, after all, live to see the spring. The snow held the North Country in its fist for another fortnight, and in that fortnight, Rose Aldrich grew slowly, steadily well, and the Duke of Harrogate discovered that his fortress of solitude had been breached beyond any hope of repair. It happened in small ways, as the important things do. She was up and about within the week, over Mrs. Fenimore's protests, because Rose Aldrich could not lie abed while others worked. It was not in her. He came upon her one morning mending a torn curtain in the blue room, sitting up in a borrowed shawl, her hand still bandaged from the frost but her needle flying. And when he began to object, she looked up at him with a flash of the spirit the fever had shown him, and said, "Your Grace, I have been given my life and a warm bed, and your own coat off your back, and I cannot sew you a new one one-handed, but I can mend a curtain, and if you take this from me too, I shall have nothing left to give, and I shall lose my mind entirely. Let me be useful. It is the only way I know how to be." And the Duke of Harrogate, who had meant to insist, found that he could not, because he understood her exactly. Understood that to a person who has been made to feel worthless, usefulness is not drudgery, but dignity, the proof that one is real and has a place. So he let her mend the curtain. And then he sat down, to her visible astonishment, in the chair opposite, and stayed an hour, and talked to her. They talked a great deal, over that snowbound fortnight. He had not talked to anyone in 2 years, not truly, not past the business of the estate. And he found that Rose Aldrich was easy to talk to, in the way that only the genuinely good-hearted are. That she listened without calculating, that she had a quick, unschooled intelligence and a dry, quiet humor that took him by surprise and made him laugh aloud in the echoing rooms of a house that had not heard him laugh since his wife died. He told her about his wife, in time, about Anne, and the long, slow illness, and the 2 silent years after, the way he had shut himself up and called it peace. And Rose listened, and did not offer him the tired comforts that others always offered, and said only, at the end, "You did not shut yourself up because you wanted peace, Your Grace. You shut yourself up because you were afraid to lose anyone again, and an empty house cannot be bereaved. I know the feeling. I have had no one to lose for a long time, and I told myself I preferred it. It is a lie we tell ourselves, I think, that not loving is the same as not hurting. It is not. It is only a slower, grayer sort of hurt that never ends." And Marcus Thane looked at the seamstress mending his curtains and understood that she had seen straight through to the center of him in a fortnight, when the whole of society had not troubled to look in 2 years, and he began, quietly, terrifyingly, to fall in love. There was an afternoon, near the end of the fortnight, that he thought of ever after as the moment he stopped fighting it. The snow had eased to a soft, steady fall, and Rose sat by the tall window of the small parlor, with a basket of the household's mending. She had commandeered it entirely by then, over Mrs. Fenimore's protests, on the grounds that a house this size had no business letting good linen go unmended while she sat idle, and the low white light lay across her bent head and her flying needle. And the Duke of Harrogate, coming in for some forgotten reason and finding her there, simply stopped in the doorway and looked, and could not for the life of him remember what he had come for. "You are staring, Your Grace," Rose said, without looking up. "You do it a great deal, you know. I am not vain enough to think it admiration, so I have concluded you are trying to work out what to do with me, and cannot decide, and I will save you the trouble. The moment the roads are clear, I will take myself off and trouble you no further. You need only feed me until then." "That is not what I am trying to work out," he said. "No?" Now she did look up, the needle stilling. "What then?" He came and sat across from her, in the chair by the window that had been his wife's chair once, though he did not say so, and for a while he watched the snow instead of her. My wife used to sit there, he said at last, in that chair, with her mending, exactly so, in that same light. She has been dead 2 years, and in all that time I have not been able to come into this room, because of that chair, and that light, and the shape a woman makes sitting in it. I closed the room. I closed a great many rooms. He turned to her. And this morning, I came in without thinking, and there you were, in the chair, in the light, and I braced for it to hurt. And it did not hurt, Rose. That is what I am trying to work out. Why it did not hurt. Why, for the first time in 2 years, that chair with a woman in it did not feel like a wound, but like the house, remembering how to breathe. I do not think I am being disloyal to say it. I think Anne would have liked you. I think she would have been glad the room was open again. But it has thrown me entirely, and I have been staring at you like a fool trying to understand what has happened to me. And I begin to be afraid I do understand, and that it is far too soon, and far too impossible, and that I do not care about either objection nearly as much as I ought. Rose Aldrich set down her mending very carefully. You should not say such things to a seamstress, Your Grace, she said. But her voice was not steady. We are practical creatures. We take things at their word. If you say the room is breathing again, I shall believe you. And then I shall have to leave all the sooner, before I begin to imagine I am the reason it breathes. Because a woman in my situation, who imagines such a thing about a man in yours, is a woman preparing herself for the longest fall there is. And if you are the reason, he said quietly, what then? She did not answer. She could not. She picked her needle back up with fingers that trembled, and bent again to her work, and the Duke of Harrogate let her have the silence, because he had said more than he had meant to, and she had heard more than she would admit, and both of them knew, sitting in the breathing room in the falling snow, that the road's clearing was not going to solve anything at all, that the true storm was the one that had come indoors, and that neither of them, whatever they told themselves about situations and stations, had the smallest wish to go back out of it into the cold. He fought it. Of course he fought it. He was a duke, and she was a friendless seamstress, with a false charge of theft against her name. The thing was impossible, unthinkable, and he told himself so firmly and often. But he had learned, sitting by her deathbed, exactly how much the impossible and unthinkable were worth against the plain fact of a life he did not want to be without. And the fight was, from the beginning, one he was going to lose, and some honest part of him knew it, and was, for the first time in 2 years, glad. There was a night, midway through that snowbound fortnight, that bound them together past any hope of undoing, though neither of them named it so at the time. He was woken past midnight by a sound he could not at first place, a thin, terrible, keening cry from along the passage, the sound of someone drowning in a dream. He was out of his bed and down the cold hall before he was fully awake, and he found Rose Aldrich thrashing in the blue room, caught in the grip of a nightmare so total that she did not wake when he spoke her name, only fought the blankets and begged, in the same broken litany the fever had shown him. Cold, so cold. Please, someone, please, the door, don't shut the door, don't leave me. Reliving, in the safety of a warm bed, the very night that had nearly killed her. And the Duke of Harrogate, who did not know the first thing about comforting anyone, sat down on the edge of the bed and gathered the fighting, freezing in her dream girl into his arms and held her, and said the only true thing he had, over and over, into her hair. The door is open, he said. Do you hear me, Rose? The door is open. No one shut it. You are not in the snow. You are at Harrogate, and the fire is lit, and the door of this room stands open, and it will always stand open, and no one will ever shut you out into the cold again, while I am alive to prevent it. Wake up now. You are warm. You are safe. Someone came. Someone came for you, Rose. Wake up. And she woke, surfacing all at once, gasping, her hands fisted in his shirt, and for a moment she did not know where the dream ended, and clung to him as though he were the one solid thing in a drowning world. And then she knew him, and knew the warm room, and she did not let go, and he did not make her. He only held her while the terror bled slowly out of her, his hand moving over her hair, until her breathing steadied, and her grip loosened, and she was, at last, simply a tired girl, held safe in the dark. "I dream it every night," she whispered, ashamed, "that the door is shutting, that the cold is coming in, and no one, that I call and no one comes. I am sorry I woke you. I am sorry. You should not have to." "Rose." He drew back just far enough to make her look at him in the firelight. "Listen to me. For the rest of your life, if you dream that the door is shutting, you may call, and someone will come. I do not care what hour it is. I do not care what the world would say about a duke in a passage at midnight. Someone will come. I will come. Do you understand? The nightmare is a lie. You called, once, out there in the real snow, and it felt as though no one came, but someone did. I came. I was slow, and I was nearly too late, and I very nearly rode past, but I came. And I will come again, every time you call, for as long as I live. That is not a kindness, Rose. It is not charity. I find that I could no more leave you calling in the dark than I could have left you at the milestone. Now sleep. I will sit here until you do. The door is open. I am in it. Nothing is coming in but the warmth." And Rose Aldrich, who had learned in the cruelest possible way that no one comes, fell asleep that night, believing, for the first time, that someone would. And the Duke of Harrogate sat in the open doorway of the blue room until dawn, keeping a watch he would, in one form or another, keep for the rest of his life, and understood somewhere in those small hours that whatever he had told himself about strangers and duty, he was never going to be able to let this woman go, and had, in truth, known it since the milestone. But first, before anything else, before he would let himself so much as name what was growing in him, there was her name to be taken back. He had given his word, and the Duke of Harrogate did not court a woman he had wronged by leaving a lie standing over her. He would clear her first, freely, wanting nothing, so that whatever came after could never be mistaken by her or by anyone for a bargain. That was the man he was. So when the roads opened at last, he rode south. What the Duke of Harrogate did next was talked of in the North Country for 30 years, and reached in time the London papers, and stunned, as the title of this tale promises, a great many people who had never heard the name Rose Aldrich and never would. He did not ride to the Barrows house quietly. He rode there in state. He might have done it privately. A duke can unmake a merchant with a whisper in the right ear. He could have ruined the Barrows with 3 letters and never left his library. But Marcus Thane had thought about it a long time on the snowbound nights, and he had understood something, that a quiet correction would clear Rose's name in the ledgers but not in the world, and it was the world's belief that had been poisoned, and only a public act could unpoison it. A lie told loudly must be answered loudly, or the lie wins. So he answered it as loudly as a duke can answer anything. He arrived in the town on market day, when it was full, with 4 outriders and the ducal arms on the carriage, and he did not go to the Barrows house. He went to the magistrate, to Sir John Ferrers, the leading man of the district, and he laid the whole matter before him formally, as a duke laying a charge, and he brought witnesses, because he had spent the opening of the roads gathering them, a laundry maid from the Barrow house, who had seen young Barrow near his mother's jewel box the very afternoon of the theft, and had been too frightened to speak, the apothecary's boy who had seen Rose flee the house that night with a fresh mark on her face and terror in it, and, most damning of all, a letter, for young Mr. Barrow, idle and stupid and certain of his safety, had boasted of the whole business in a letter to a friend in the town, and the friend, when a duke's man came asking, and a duke's displeasure was made plain, had been most eager to produce it. The letter said everything. It named the brooch, the hiding of it, the lie, the pleasure young Barrow had taken in the seamstress's ruin. It was, the magistrate said gravely, as complete a confession of a monstrous act as he had seen in 30 years on the bench. And the Duke of Harrogate stood up, in the crowded market town, before the magistrate and the gathered people, and he cleared Rose Aldrich's name in words that were carried from mouth to mouth across the whole North Country by nightfall. "Let it be known," he said, "in this town and every town, that Rose Aldrich, seamstress, late of this house, is no thief. She never was. She was a good and honest servant, wronged by a coward who could not have her honestly, and chose to destroy her rather than be refused. and who then, with his family's connivance, branded her a thief and put her out into a killing snow to die, so that his lie need never be answered. She did not die. I found her at a milestone on the North Road, an hour from death, and I have had the truth of her these 3 weeks, and I stake my name and my honor, the name of Harrogate, which has meant something in this country for 300 years, upon her innocence. Any man who repeats the lie against her repeats it against me, and will answer to me for it. And the Barrows, he turned, and his voice went cold as the North Road itself. The Barrows will answer to the law for what they did, and to their neighbors for what they are, and to me, personally and at length, for the crime of putting a defenseless girl into the snow to hide a rich boy's shame. I will see them prosecuted. I will see them known. From this day the name Barrow will cost more in this county than the name Aldrich ever did, and that is justice, and I will spend whatever it takes to make it stick. It stuck. A duke's word against a merchant's is no contest at all, and a duke's word backed by witnesses and a written confession is a rout. Young Barrow was taken up and charged. The family, ruined in reputation and standing, found the county closed against them, and the name Rose Aldrich, which had been poisoned in a single cruel night, was cleansed in a single public mourning, and more than cleansed, for there is a particular sympathy the world reserves for the wronged once their wronging is proven. And Rose, who had been a friendless nobody, became overnight the seamstress the Duke of Harrogate himself had ridden out to vindicate, the girl at the milestone, the survivor of the snow. The story ran ahead of the facts, as stories do, growing in the telling, until it reached London and the papers, and all of fashionable England read of the grave northern duke who had pulled a dying seamstress from a snowdrift and then ridden out in state to break the family that had wronged her, and asked one another, over the teacups, what on earth it could mean, and whether the Duke of Harrogate, that famous recluse, could possibly mean no, surely not, a seamstress. And yet, how very romantic, how very strange. What could he mean by it? The Duke of Harrogate, riding home through the thawing country with a magistrate's order in his pocket and a great weight lifted off his heart, knew exactly what he meant by it, and was only just beginning to admit it to himself. He came home to find Rose Aldrich packing. It was a small bundle. Everything she owned in the world fit into a shawl knotted at the corners, and she was doing it with the brisk determination of a woman who has decided something difficult and means to see it through before her courage fails. She had heard the news of the town. The whole house had. Her name was cleared, the Barrows undone, and Rose Aldrich was free, at last, to go and make an honest life somewhere, with an honest character behind her. And so she was going. He stood in the doorway of the blue room and watched her knot her bundle, and felt the floor of his own chest drop away. "You are leaving," he said. Rose did not look up. "You have given me back my life twice over, Your Grace. Once from the snow and once from the lie. I cannot take a third gift from you, and I am afraid that if I stay another day, I will begin to want to, and that would not be right. I have my name back. I can go to the town, or to York, and take honest work. A cleared woman, with a duke's own word behind her. There is no seamstress in the north with a better character now, thanks to you. So I am going to use it, while I still can. She stopped, and her hands went still on the knot. Before I forget my place so entirely that I break my own heart. It is best I go, Your Grace. You know that it is. Please do not make it harder by being kind about it. I have not the strength for your kindness this morning. It is the one thing I cannot bear. Rose." He came into the room. "Put down the bundle." "Your Grace." "Marcus," he said. "My name is Marcus. You have called me Your Grace for 3 weeks, and I have let you, because you were my guest and it was proper. But I find this morning I cannot bear it either, so I am asking you to stop. Put down the bundle, Rose, and look at me, and let me say a thing I have ridden 2 days to be able to say. And if at the end of it you still wish to go, then I will have the carriage brought, and I will take you anywhere in England you like, and I will never trouble you again. But hear it first. You owe me that much for the coat, at least." Slowly Rose set down the bundle. Slowly she turned, and the Duke of Harrogate, who had faced down a magistrate and a merchant family, and a killing storm in the space of 3 weeks without a tremor, found that his hands were not entirely steady. "When I found you at the milestone," he said, "I told myself I was saving a stranger's life, because that is what a decent man does, and I am tolerably decent, and it cost me nothing but a coat and a night's ride. That is what I told myself. It was a lie, though I did not know it yet. Because a man who has merely saved a stranger does not sit 3 days and nights by her bed doing a nurse's work with his own hands. He does not learn the sound of her breathing and lie awake listening for it to change. He does not ride 2 days in the mud to break the people who wronged her. I did all of that, Rose, and I told myself it was duty, and it was not duty. It was that somewhere in those 3 days by your bed, I stopped being able to imagine the rest of my life without you in it. And I have spent every mile of the road home admitting it to myself, and I am done pretending. I did not save a stranger's life at that milestone. I saved my own. I have been dead 2 years, Rose, shut up in this house, calling it peace, and you were dying in the snow, and I pulled you out, and it turns out I pulled myself out with you. You gave me back my life at the same moment I gave you yours. I only understood it slower." Rose Aldrich had gone very white. "You must not," she whispered. "You must not say such things to me. You are a duke. I am a seamstress with frost scars on my hands. Whatever you feel, whatever these strange weeks have made you feel, it cannot. The world will not. You cannot marry a seamstress, Marcus. They will." "I have thought about what they will do," he said. "I have thought about very little else for 2 days, and I have discovered that I do not care. Let me tell you what the world did, Rose. While I sat in my fortress calling it peace, the world watched a good woman get thrown into the snow to hide a rich boy's shame, and the world was perfectly prepared to let her freeze and call it justice, and not one soul in that whole town lifted a hand until a duke came riding. That is the world whose opinion I am to fear? That is the society I am to bow to? I have spent 2 years letting the world tell me who I might grieve and how, and I am finished taking the world's instruction. I am the Duke of Harrogate. I will marry where I love, and I love you, and if all of fashionable England chokes on its teacups over it, then fashionable England may choke, and I will not lose an hour's sleep. I have already lost 2 years to caring what could not matter. I do not intend to lose the rest." "But I have nothing," Rose said, and now she was weeping, the bundle forgotten, the whole careful plan of her leaving in ruins. "I bring you nothing. No fortune, no family, no rank, no. I would be a scandal on your arm. I would shame your name. You would save my name," Marcus said, "as you saved the rest of me. Do you not understand yet? Harrogate has been a tomb for 2 years. You have been in it 3 weeks, and it has begun to be a house again. I have heard servants laughing in the hall for the first time since Anne died. I have laughed myself. I laughed yesterday in the saddle over some dry thing you said a week ago, and startled my own horse. You do not bring me nothing, Rose Aldrich. You bring me the one thing I had given up for lost, which is a reason to be alive in my own house. There is no fortune in England worth that. I would not trade one frost scar on your brave hands for the whole dowry of the richest heiress in London." He took a step closer, and then, gravely, deliberately, the Duke of Harrogate went down on one knee before the seamstress on the floor of the blue room, where she had nearly died. "So, I am not going to let you knot that bundle and walk out of my life to protect me from a scandal I am not afraid of. I am going to ask you, instead, to stay, not as a guest, not as a seamstress, as my wife, as the Duchess of Harrogate. I am asking you to marry me, Rose, knowing exactly what you are, which is the finest and bravest woman I have ever known, and exactly what you bring, which is everything I thought I had lost. Marry me. Let the world talk. We will be too happy to hear it." Rose Aldrich looked down at the Duke of Harrogate kneeling on the floor before her, and the whole impossible mountain of reasons why she must say no. The rank, the world, the frost scars, the seamstress's bundle at her feet, stood between them exactly as tall as ever, and she found, looking into his grave, dark, steady eyes, that she no longer had the strength or the will to climb it, because he was not offering her a rescue. She had been braced against a rescue. She could have refused a rescue. Her pride would have demanded it. He was offering her a partnership of two half-dead people who had, impossibly, pulled each other back into the land of the living, and there is no pride in the world strong enough to refuse that, once it is truly seen for what it is. "If I say yes," she said, through her tears, "you can never let me become small in that great house. I have been small my whole life, Marcus. I have been girl, and the seamstress, and the thief, and a bundle in the snow. If I am to be your duchess, I must be your duchess. Not a seamstress you dressed up, not a charity you married, but your wife, your equal, mistress of your house in truth. Can you give me that? Not the title, the standing. Can you make them see me, truly see me, the way you saw me at the milestone, when no one else would even stop?" "I made a whole town see you in a single morning," said the Duke of Harrogate. "I will make the world see you for the rest of our lives. That is a promise, and you have learned by now that I keep them. Say yes, Rose. I am getting rather old to be kneeling on a hard floor, and I find I cannot rise until you do." And Rose Aldrich, seamstress, survivor of the snow, cleared of a lie, and asked at last by the one man who had ever truly stopped for her, began to laugh through her weeping, and she sank down onto the floor of the blue room to kneel with him, face to face, exactly as they had been on the night she woke, and she took his grave dark face in her frost-scarred hands. "Yes," she said, "Marcus, yes, God help us both, yes." They were married in the spring, when the snow that had so nearly killed her had melted off the north country and left it green and new, and the Duke of Harrogate married his seamstress in the great church at Harrogate, before a congregation that had come, in no small part, to gawk, for the story had spread the length of England, and half the county came to see the girl from the milestone become a duchess, expecting, perhaps, to be able to sneer. They did not sneer for long. It is very difficult to sneer at a bride who walks up the aisle the way Rose Aldrich walked up it, not cowed, not overawed, not pretending to a grandeur she did not feel, but simply, quietly, wholly herself, a woman who had faced down death in a snowdrift, and could hardly be expected to be frightened of a church full of gossips. She wore ivory silk that she had, characteristically, helped to sew herself, having declared that she would not be married in a gown made by hands less careful than her own, and the county, which had come to look down, found itself, by the end of the ceremony, oddly moved, and then frankly won over, because there is a thing that shines out of people who have suffered greatly and come through it kind, and Rose Aldrich shone with it, and it silenced the whole church. And the Duke of Harrogate kept every promise he had made her. He made the world see her. He took her to London that first season and stood beside her like a fortress, while fashionable England came to inspect the Duke's low-born bride, and fashionable England, which had sharpened its claws, discovered that the new Duchess of Harrogate could not be made small, because a woman who has been as low as the floor of a snowdrift has no fear left of a drawing-room, and a woman with no fear is the one thing the tongue cannot conquer. Within a season she was not a scandal but a fascination. Within 2 she was sought after. Within 3 the very dowagers who had come to sneer were boasting of their friendship with the remarkable Duchess of Harrogate, who had such a way with the poor of the parish, and such a head for her husband's affairs, and such a story. Had they told you the story? Pulled from the very snow, my dear, an hour from death, and cleared by the Duke's own hand. But the London seasons were never the part Rose loved. What she loved was Harrogate, the great house she filled with warmth and use, and the small, ordinary noise of a home, the tenants whose names and troubles she learned as naturally as breathing, the sewing room she kept always, teaching the village girls the trade that had once been her only refuge, so that no girl on Harrogate land need ever be as friendless and unskilled and at the mercy of the world as she herself had been. She never forgot the milestone. She had it in her, always, the memory of the cold, of the closing dark, of the certainty that she would die unmourned, and no one would even stop. It made her the kind of duchess who always stopped. There was not a soul in the North Country in trouble that the Duchess of Harrogate did not stop for, because she had been the soul no one stopped for, and she had learned in the snow the exact worth of a single person willing to turn a horse's head and look twice at a shape in a drift. Years later, many years, when there were children grown and the great house was full, and the 2 years of grief that had preceded her were a thing Marcus could hardly credit had ever been. The Duke of Harrogate stood at a window with his wife watching the snow come down over the north country, the first snow of a hard winter, whitening the road where he had found her. "I still ride out," he said, "the first snow of every year, along the north road, past the milestone. You know that I do." "I know," said Rose. She slipped her scarred hand into his. "The grooms think you sentimental. Mrs. Fenimore thinks you mad. I think you are the only man in England wise enough to remember, every single year, exactly how much a life is worth, and how nearly it is lost, and how much turns on whether one man will stop." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you know what I think of, every first snow? Tell me." "I think that somewhere on some road tonight there is another girl in a paper cloak," Rose said quietly, "who has been thrown out to freeze by people who called her nothing. And I think of how the whole of my life, this house, these children, you, all of it, turned on a horse that shied, and a man who looked down. And I make them send the carriages out, every first snow, up and down the north road, to look. You did not know that, did you? It is why the Harrogate carriages are always abroad in the first snow, with lanterns, when every other great house is shut up warm. We are looking for the shape in the drift, because someone looked for me." She turned her face up to his. "That is the truest thing you ever gave me, Marcus. Not the name, not the title, not even the love, great as it is. You taught me that a person is worth stopping for. I have spent the rest of my life stopping. It is the whole of what I am for." The Duke of Harrogate drew his wife against him, and watched the snow come down over the road that had so nearly taken her, and had instead given her to him. And he thought that he had ridden past a great many things in his life without stopping, in the 2 gray years before her. Past joy, past grief, past his own living heart. And that the one time he had looked down, the one time in 40 years he had turned aside for a shape in the snow, it had saved not 1 life but 2, and made, out of 2 half-frozen strangers, the whole warm rest of both their lives. "Someone looked for you," he agreed, his cheek against her hair. Thank God I looked." And outside, in the gathering dark, the Harrogate carriages went out along the north road with their lanterns lit, looking, as they did every first snow, for whoever else the cruel world had thrown away, because the Duke had stopped once, for a shape in a drift, and it had stunned all of England, and it had never, in all the long happy years since, stopped stunning him what one small mercy had grown into.